I never thought I'd hear my own child tell me to go sleep in my car. But that night, standing on the porch I paid to have built, my bones aching, coat damp with cold rain, she looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, I'm sorry, but you'll have to sleep in your car tonight." And then she shut the door. No hug. No blanket. No shame. Just the sound of a deadbolt sliding into place like the final line in a cruel letter I didn't know she'd been writing for years. I didn't knock again. I didn't plead or bang the door or ask if she remembered who rocked her through the fever that nearly stole her at 4 years old. I just stood there. The porch light was off. It always turned off automatically at 11, and by the way she didn't turn it back on, I knew she'd planned this. I could still hear the hum of her central heat inside, and I thought, so this is what betrayal sounds like warmth just out of reach. I had just driven 3 hours from the emergency room. I fainted in the cereal aisle. Low blood sugar. They ran tests. Asked if I had someone to call. I told them yes. I was wrong. When I pulled into the driveway, my fingers were still shaking. The same hands that once sewed her Halloween costumes, still trembling from lack of food, from shock, from whatever it is that breaks when your child decides you're inconvenient. I stood on that porch like a stranger, like a tenant who forgot to renew her lease. And in a way, maybe I had. I gave her everything over the years, not just money, but time. Silence. The kind of mothering that bends backwards and forward until it forgets its own spine. And all it took was one late rent payment for her to show me where I really stood. I had missed it by 3 days. Not because I couldn't pay, but because I was sick and scared and proud. And she didn't ask why. She just left a voicemail saying, "Please don't be late again. This is a formal arrangement now." I should have known then. But you don't expect a daughter to draw up battle lines in pencil. You expect her to draw hearts around your name on her wedding RSVP card. You expect her to call and ask how your cough is. You don't expect her to hand you keys to the guest room and call it a transitional space. When I got back in the car, I didn't start it right away. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, breath fogging up the windshield, staring at the porch I once swept barefoot on summer mornings. I remembered her first steps, right there, in front of the hydrangeas. The same spot where she later told me, "You're just not easy to live with anymore, OM." As if old age is a crime. I remembered when I gifted her this house. It wasn't in a ribbon. It was in papers. Quiet papers I thought meant love. She asked me to co-sign, just to help her get approved. And I did. Of course I did. What mother wouldn't? It was supposed to be temporary, a technicality, a way to keep the house in the family. But family means something different when you're not useful anymore. Family means, pay your share or get out. Family means, you can stay in the basement for now. Family means, maybe it's time you consider assisted living. But that night, family meant, you can sleep in your car. So I did. 3 hours away from any other option. No medication. No coat warm enough. Just me, and the sound of betrayal ticking in the dashboard clock. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and closed my eyes. And what I saw wasn't sadness. It was clarity. A sharp, cutting line between what I had given and what I had tolerated. Because love doesn't excuse erasure. Love doesn't come with invoices, late fees, and voicemail ultimatums. Love doesn't lock the door on a mother with bruised ribs and unpaid hospital bills. I thought about going to a shelter. I thought about calling a friend. But the truth is, when humiliation sets in, you don't want to be seen. You want to disappear. Quietly. With dignity. So I stayed. In that car. And I let the tears wait. Because if I cried now, it would mean she won. And I wasn't ready to give her that. The betrayal didn't hurt because she said it. It hurt because she meant it. It hurt because her voice didn't shake. It hurt because she closed the door like she'd rehearsed it. Like I'd become a scene in a play she'd been writing behind my back. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I just watched the sky change colors through the fogged glass of the windshield. And when the sun came up, I opened my eyes with a new kind of focus. The kind that comes after heartbreak. The kind that comes before a storm. Because this wasn't just the end of a long day. This was the end of pretending I was loved the way I deserved. And the beginning of remembering who this house really belonged to. Because the thing about signing over your silence is that you can always take it back. And the thing about locks is that I still had the original key. I walked in and found a printed invoice where a welcome hug used to be, taped right there on the fridge door, in the spot where once she'd drawn me hearts as a child. Now it read, "Let's keep things professional. Here's a breakdown of what you owe. Rent, utilities, water, gas, interest. Twice." I stood there holding my keys like a stranger on trial. The paper flapped slightly as the fan kicked on, as if even the air was embarrassed by what she'd done. I didn't take it down right away. I just read it, slowly, line by line, debt by debt, memory by memory. I had just spent the night in my car. The seatbelt buckle had pressed into my ribs. My hips still ached from where the gearshift dug in. But I told myself, she'll apologize. She was tired, angry. Just give her the chance. Instead, I found a receipt, not for groceries or a favor, but for my presence in her life. I sat down at the kitchen table and looked around. The curtains were the ones I had stitched for her first apartment. She used to say they made her feel safe. Now she just made me feel priced. The silence in the apartment had changed. It was no longer peace. It was punishment. She wasn't home, thank God. I don't know if I could have looked her in the eyes without something breaking. Instead, I walked over to the cupboard. Just a reflex, really. I needed tea. Warmth. A ritual. I opened the door and found nothing. Every single one of my teas. Gone. The chamomile I kept for sleepless nights. The peppermint she used to sip when she had stomachaches. The Earl Grey I'd kept in the glass jar since her father passed. Gone. Replaced with protein powder and espresso pods. As if healing no longer belonged in this house. Only performance did. I closed the cupboard. One hinge clicked a second later, like even it didn't want to say goodbye. I moved to the sink. Dishes piled high. Not mine. Wine glasses with lipstick stains. 2 forks left soaking in gray water like tiny skeletons. My hands trembled, but not from fear. From memory. I used to wash dishes in silence while she did her homework beside me. She'd hum. Tap her pencil. Ask if we had cookies. Now she'd rather charge me for light bulbs. I took a deep breath and sat back down at the table. The receipt was still there. So precise. So clinical. She'd bolded the numbers. Italicized the due date. She even included emotional strain as a calculated wear and tear fee. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. There was no daughter here. Only a landlord with my eyes. The last time she'd printed something for me, it was her 5th grade science project. A diagram of the solar system, with glitter stars and misspelled planets. I'd tacked it to the fridge and told her I was proud. And now here I was, tacking up debt, trying to remember what I did wrong. Maybe I loved too much. Or maybe I made it too easy. I thought being generous would build gratitude. But I had only built entitlement. I looked at the receipt again. Interest. On what? On my groceries? On the bed she still slept in, the one I bought secondhand and fixed myself? On the stories I stayed awake for, the soup I made during breakups, The nights I held her hair back while she sobbed over boys who didn't deserve her? She was charging me interest on years I gave her for free. I stood up, took the paper, and folded it carefully. I didn't rip it. I didn't throw it away. I tucked it into my coat pocket like a love letter turned poison, because someday I would need to remember exactly when it changed. Not when she raised her voice, not when she locked the door, but when she put a price tag on her own mother. That's when I realized I hadn't raised cruelty, but I had fed it, with silence, with second chances, with "it's okay, sweethearts." And now she thought kindness came with receipts. She thought I would pay to stay invisible. But I don't pay rent in homes I built. I don't pay interest on love that was never returned. And I don't stay where I'm unwanted, especially when I still have the deed. That morning, I made tea with hot tap water. No leaves. No flavor. Just heat. I sipped it anyway, and it tasted like resolve, like something final. I looked around that kitchen one more time, not as a mother, not as a guest, as an owner, and for the first time in years, I saw the walls for what they were. Mine. I had raised her with love, but I wouldn't bury myself with it. Not this time. And not for her. I heard her laugh through the vent above my bed. She still thinks this is her house, she said, voice syrup slick and amused. She's basically just a tenant now. I mean, we let her stay out of kindness. The clink of wine glasses followed. Applause. Like I was a charity case being toasted upstairs. I lay still, the quilt pulled to my chin. The same one I sewed when she was born. Yellow daisies, her favorite as a child. Now, she wouldn't even call me Mom. Eleanor, she said sharply the day before, her heels echoing down the hallway. Your boxes can't stay here. I need this space for my books. My boxes, filled with 30 years of memories. My husband's letters. My mother's recipe cards. Our wedding album, spine cracked with time. I moved them without a word. Stacked them neatly beside the staircase like luggage left behind at a station. She didn't help. 2 nights later, I came down to find she'd switched the name on the mailbox. Just Mr. and Mrs. Carter. No Pierce. No me. The house I paid off, scrubbed clean of me like I was a stain. That Friday, she hosted a dinner party. People I didn't know filled the kitchen, opening drawers I once organized. One woman asked, "Whose pictures are those in the hallway?" And Claire, my daughter, smiled, casual as smoke. "Oh, that's just the previous generation. We're planning to update everything soon." I stood there, invisible, holding a tray of lemon squares. She caught my eye and waved me off. "You can go now," she whispered. "Your section is downstairs anyway." My section. That's what she called it. The back guest room with the leaky radiator and the single bulb that buzzed. No heat vent, no closet. She didn't say it with cruelty. That would have been easier. She said it with ownership. As if I were the one lucky to be offered shelter. As if this place hadn't been my entire life. Later, when the guests left and the dishes were half done, I found a folded note on the counter. A to-do list. At the top, remind Eleanor to get her prescriptions elsewhere. Our plan doesn't cover her anymore. I stared at the handwriting. My daughter's curls. Now cold. When did love become a ledger? That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly above me. The soft whirring sound reminded me of summer nights when Claire was small. I used to sing her to sleep under this roof. I used to whisper, "You're safe here." And now I had become an obligation, a tolerated inconvenience. But here's the part she forgot, the part she never thought to ask about. The deed. My name. Still printed in ink. still filed, still notarized. She never even asked who truly owned this place. She just assumed silence meant surrender. She thought I stayed quiet because I was weak, because I didn't argue, because I made her tea after she rolled her eyes at my stories, because I still folded her towels the way she liked. But I wasn't quiet because I was broken. I was quiet because I was watching. Every smirk, every slip, every time she corrected me with Eleanor instead of Mom. She stripped my name of affection and gave it to the gas bill. She took my motherhood and replaced it with a rental agreement, one I never signed. And still, I waited. Not to be welcomed, not to be thanked, but to be underestimated, fully. Because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one folding napkins. She forgot who taught her silence could be strength, who taught her to speak with grace, not volume. She forgot who paid the first mortgage, who held her in a rocking chair when her world fell apart at 15, who kept her secret when she crashed the car and cried at midnight. She forgot, but I remembered everything. And that memory, not rage, was the weapon I polished each night. So I stayed in my section. For now. I kept my words tucked in envelopes and my truth inside file folders. Because I knew the day would come when she'd call me tenant again, but in front of someone who mattered. And when that day came, she'd learn the difference between staying quiet and being erased. She slid the envelope across the kitchen counter like it was a menu. This is just your share for the groceries. You know, since you're still here. Her words didn't sting. Not anymore. They landed like dust on glass, visible but powerless. I unfolded the slip she'd printed out with such care. A list of condiments, apples, almond milk, laundry pods. She'd even itemized my tea. Earl Grey, $5.29. There it was. The price of my dignity. I nodded, slowly. Smiled, even. But I didn't answer. Because I wasn't there to argue. I was there to end it. That morning, I had taken the 7:40 bus into town. Not because I don't drive, but because I didn't want her seeing my car gone and growing suspicious. I wore my navy coat. The one with the deep inside pocket where I kept things no one could take from me. And inside that coat pocket was the key. To a safe deposit box. To my freedom. The teller at the bank remembered me. Miss Pierce, she said kindly, sliding the thick metal tray forward. And there it was. The original deed. Yellowing slightly at the edges, but sharp where it mattered. My name. Eleanor Margaret Pierce. Sole owner. No transfer. No lien. No co-signer. I stared at it for a long time. It had been years since I touched it. Not because I forgot, but because I believed I'd never need to prove what I already knew. But belief doesn't shield you from betrayal. And love doesn't count in court. I placed the folder back in the tray with care. Then I walked 3 blocks south to a building with cracked marble steps and a name etched in brass. Victor L. Hammond, ESQ. I hadn't needed Victor in over a decade, but we still exchanged Christmas cards. And when I walked into his office that morning, he didn't say hello. He just looked up and asked, "When do we begin?" She was out when I returned home, probably at her Pilates class. The one I paid for the first 3 months. Said it was a gift, back when I still thought we were healing. I made tea, not Earl Grey. Not today. Today called for something stronger. Chamomile, laced with cinnamon bark. The kind I drank the day her father left, and I promised myself I'd never break down in front of her. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she once did homework. And I signed the papers. Every last one. The listing agreement. The disclosure forms. The transfer clause. It took 20 minutes to do what she'd been trying to force for months. Move me out. but not the way she imagined. That evening, when she returned, she didn't ask how my day was. She walked in, dropped her gym bag by the door, and opened the fridge. "Did you eat my yogurt?" she asked. I didn't respond. I was watching the steam rise from my mug. It curled like smoke signals from a war she didn't even know had started. That's when she handed me the bill. Groceries. Again. This time, she'd added shared water usage. $24.16. She even included a smiley face next to the line item. "Hope this is motivating you to find your own place." I didn't flinch, just looked at her. And for a second, I think she noticed something different. She tilted her head. "What?" she asked. I smiled. "Nothing," I said. But inside, I was already gone. The next morning, the realtor met me in his car 2 blocks away. He was younger than I expected, clean-cut, polite. He opened his briefcase on his lap like we were sharing state secrets. "We can have it staged and shown within 10 days, he said. I shook my head. "No staging. No signs. I want this quiet." He nodded. "Off-market listing. Private viewings only." He hesitated, then asked, "But someone lives there, right?" I looked out the window toward the house. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Probably shopping. Probably using the card I forgot to cancel. "Yes," I said. "But not for long." He didn't ask anything else. I handed him the signed documents. The same hands that once held her baby shoes, her fevered forehead, her future. Now they handed over the papers that would take all of it back. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. She thought I would leave quietly. She forgot I had never agreed to leave at all. That night, I cooked dinner. Just for myself. She came home late, saw the single plate on the table, and blinked. "No food for me?" I shrugged. "There's cereal in the cupboard." She laughed, confused, then disappeared upstairs. I heard her on the phone later. "Yeah, she's still here. Can you believe it?" In the days that followed, I received 3 offers. Victor reviewed them all. We chose the second. All cash. Fast close. He filed the notice. The clock had started. Claire wouldn't know it yet, but her clock had started too. It took one bill for almond milk to wake me up. But it took clarity to stand up. You can raise a daughter in a house, but you cannot raise her heart. Not if she chooses entitlement over memory. And when she said, "You don't belong here anymore," I remembered whose name paid the first mortgage check. And the last. So I drank my tea, filed the papers, and waited. Because she wasn't going to lose the house. She just wasn't going to own it. She walked in from yoga and froze. Her mat still tucked under one arm, sweat clinging to her temples, mouth parted like she'd forgotten how to breathe. And I was folding the brochures. They fluttered in my hand like little invitations to truth. "What is this?" she asked, voice too loud for a house that had just remembered who it belonged to. I didn't answer right away. I let her look. Let her see. The couple in the hallway admiring the antique banister I had refinished after her father died. The realtor offering juice in the kitchen she once called outdated. The sign out front. Bright red. Open house. Private listing. The smell of lemon polish hung in the air. I had scrubbed every corner with my own hands. "What is this?" she said again. But this time, her voice cracked. The anger hadn't reached her yet. Just confusion. A child walking into a dream that no longer belonged to her. I looked up from the stack of papers. Met her eyes like she was a stranger who happened to look familiar. "This," I said softly, "is an open house." Then I let the last line land. "You're standing in mine." The silence that followed felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. You don't hear the wind. You feel the weight of the drop. Her yoga mat hit the floor first. Then came the scream, a sharp, breathless kind. Not of pain, of panic. You can't do this. Her feet stomped toward me like a tantrum I had once quieted with milk and lullabies. Her hands waved, wild and desperate. This is illegal. I'll call the police. I'll sue. You've lost your mind. I didn't flinch. I reached into the manila folder beside me, pulled out the documents. Notarized. Sealed. Final. She snatched them like she expected to catch a lie in the ink. Her eyes moved fast. Line to line. Clause to clause. Her lips moving without sound. 3 times she read them. 3 times her hands began to shake. You wouldn't dare, she whispered. I walked to the fridge, opened it with calm, pulled out the last slice of blueberry pie I had made the night before, placed it gently on a plate, set it on the counter. I already did, I said. The realtor smiled awkwardly. Would you like me to ask her to step out? I shook my head. No need. She's not listed on the deed. She's just visiting. He nodded. Professional. Neutral. But I saw it in his eyes, the flicker of surprise. I had been the quiet one, the soft one, the woman with the cashmere sweaters and folded hands. But today I was the signature. Guests arrived in waves. Some admired the crown molding. Some whispered about the history. One woman placed a hand over her heart in the sunroom and said, "It feels warm here, like someone really lived." I smiled. It always did, I replied. Just not for everyone. Claire didn't leave. Not for hours. She paced. She muttered. She watched strangers walk through her space like it was on borrowed time. She followed one couple down the hallway and asked, "Wouldn't you want something more modern?" They ignored her. She pulled me aside once, tried her old tricks. The soft voice, the faux tears. "Mom," she said, "we can work this out." I didn't mean to, but I raised a finger. "I'm not your mom today," I said quietly. "I'm the seller." Her face twisted. I'd seen that face before, when she was 16 and got caught lying about the prom. It was the face of a girl who never thought the rules would apply to her. "You're throwing me away," she hissed. "No," I said. "I'm throwing away what you became." By late afternoon, the house had been seen by 9 families. One left a note, "Feels like a home built by love." I folded it and placed it in my coat pocket, not because I needed validation, but because sometimes strangers see what your own blood refuses to. Claire stormed upstairs, then down again, packed a bag, unpacked it, sat on the steps with her head in her hands. She looked small there, the same way she did after her first heartbreak, back when she curled into my lap and said, "He promised he wouldn't leave." Funny. So did she. When the last car pulled away, the sun had already begun to dip. I turned off the porch light, locked the door. She stood in the living room, barefoot, arms crossed. "You can't sell this place," she said one last time. I opened the same folder, pointed to the clause she had missed. Quiet title action. Filed. Final. Irrevocable. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But I live here." "No," I said, placing the pie plate in the sink. "You stayed here. I lived." The final offer came in just past sunset. Above asking. Cash. Close in 2 weeks. I accepted. Not out of greed, but out of peace. You don't owe second chances to people who counted you out the first time. She slept in the guest room that night. Didn't speak. In the morning, she was gone. Left a note. "You've ruined everything." I read it, smiled softly, then tossed it into the fireplace. I sat by the window with tea. The good kind. The one she never let me buy because it was too expensive for daily use. I drank it slowly, watched the for sale sign glint under the porch light, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a tenant in my own skin. I felt like the woman who'd written her name on the deed, and finally remembered what it meant. She slammed the cupboard so hard, the wine glasses rattled. But I didn't blink. Not even when the music came on, loud, obnoxious, the bass thrumming through the floorboards like a threat. That was her warning shot. A tantrum in surround sound. She still believed I was bluffing, as if the papers on the dining table weren't real. As if the words "Your notice starts now," written in my hand, didn't count unless I screamed them. She thought the quiet was weakness. She hadn't learned. I do my best work in silence. She stormed through the kitchen, slamming drawers, muttering curses just loud enough for the walls to absorb. But I didn't engage. I was past that now. I'd already signed. Final offer. Clean. Cash. Closing in 10 days. That house, my house, was no longer a battlefield. It was a countdown. I brewed tea that night like I always did. Same pot, same cup, same old steeped leaves that had seen too much betrayal to taste bitter anymore. She glared at me across the kitchen, eyes wild, cheeks blotched from either rage or regret. It didn't matter which. "You're ruining everything," she hissed. I didn't answer, just stirred in honey. Because what could I say? I had ruined nothing. I had simply stopped letting her steal it. I left the envelope on the table, heavy with signatures and finality. On top, a small yellow post-it in my handwriting. "Your notice starts now." No threats. No lectures. Just the same handwriting I'd used on her lunchbox when she was 7. "Love you, Claire. Have a good day." She used to keep those notes folded in her backpack. Now she ripped this one in half. 2 mornings later, there was a knock at the door. Not frantic. Not furious. Just firm. Final. She was still in pajamas when she answered. Hair messy, eyes wide. The sheriff stood tall behind the screen. "Claire Hastings?" he asked. She looked back at me. Disbelief painted across her face like a child caught stealing. I was already dressed. My bag packed. The tea finished. He handed her a folded document. "This is formal notice. You are required to vacate this property. You have until end of day." She blinked. "You're serious?" she gasped, looking at me. "You're ruining my life," she whimpered. I looked at the sheriff, then back at her. "I gave you time," I said. "You used it to take, bought." The ones I gave her. Old leather weekender bags I used when we took beach trips. She packed them with dresses bought with my cards. Shoes I never wore. Tupperware she never returned. I sat in the armchair. The one with the small tear in the fabric from years ago when the cat we rescued clawed it in a panic. She wanted to throw it out. I never let her. That chair had more patience than I ever did. Today I felt like it. She called someone. More than once. Cried on the phone. Begged for sympathy. I heard her say, "She's old. She doesn't know what she's doing. She'll cave." Then I heard silence. Maybe even her friends were tired of the same story. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't throw anything. Didn't threaten. I just watched her pack things she didn't own into bags she didn't earn. And when she left the front door open behind her, just like she always did, I stood up and closed it. Softly. That night, I stayed at the Garden View Motel, 3 blocks away. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, quiet. I opened the window and let the breeze in. It smelled like tulips and pavement. I hadn't noticed that smell in years. In that motel bed, I didn't cry, didn't toss, didn't feel anything except light. I had never realized how heavy her presence had become, until I wasn't holding it anymore. In the morning, I walked the community garden, waved to the man who always played chess by himself, watched an older couple water tomatoes, smiled at the sky. I used to walk that same garden with her when she was small. She'd beg to pick flowers. I'd always say, "Not yet. Let them bloom." Now, I knew the lesson had always been mine. When I returned home 2 days later, the house was still. Not empty, but finally still. Her scent was gone. The clutter, the tension that clung to every wall. I walked through each room like I was remembering it for the first time. The wood creaked in the hallway. The mirror still had her fingerprints. I wiped them away with a soft cloth. Then I changed the locks. The new owners would arrive in a week. Until then, it was just me. Me and the quiet. Me and the walls that had seen too much. I slept in my own bed that night. No banging. No shouting. No music. Just the ticking of the clock I'd bought on our first anniversary. The hum of the old fridge. The sigh of my bones settling into peace. She hasn't called since. I don't expect her to. She's not the kind who apologizes. But even if she did, I wouldn't return the keys. Because I didn't just sell a house. I reclaimed a life. She thought eviction needed yelling. Lawyers. Locks. Police. But sometimes eviction is quieter than that. Sometimes it's just a teacup placed gently in the sink. A signature on a line. A post-it that says, "Your notice starts now." And a woman who finally kept the last promise she made to herself. To never be erased in her own home again. I deleted her number the same minute I signed the deed. No ceremony. No shaking hands. Just a quiet tap of my finger on a phone screen. And years of noise, demands, accusations, gone. They always say silence is peaceful. But they never tell you how heavy it is at first. Like dragging a suitcase full of your own bones into a new life. The cottage was smaller than anything I'd lived in. 3 towns over. Tucked between an apple orchard and a crooked fence held up by wild jasmine. I didn't tell anyone. No moving truck. No forwarding address. Just the sound of gravel under tired tires. And the soft creak of a front door that had been waiting for someone who knew how to close things gently. Inside, the light came through the lace curtains like it had nothing to hide. I hadn't seen light like that in years. Not filtered through tension, not choked by obligation. There was no hallway full of her shoes. No loud music vibrating from rooms I paid for. No perfume clouding the kitchen where I'd once been called. Dead weight with opinions. Only the soft hum of an old radio I'd pulled from the attic. And the kettle beginning to whisper on the stove. I didn't bring much. A few books. The painting supplies I hadn't touched since Michael was in grade school. And one folder, thick, creased, filled with every invoice Claire ever handed me. Every time she charged me rent to sleep under my own roof. Every grocery bill she sent to remind me to pay my way. The one where she circled "snacks you ate" in red ink like I'd stolen them. I kept them, not out of spite, but as a reminder of the moment I realized I wasn't a mother in her home. I was an expense. The day after I moved in, I bought real cream for my coffee. Not powdered. Not skim. The good kind. The kind she said I didn't need at my age. I poured it slow. Watched it bloom in the dark. like softness returning to a bruise. That morning, I played a record I hadn't heard in 30 years. Chopin. The same piece I used to play for her when she had night terrors as a child. She would curl against me, fingers tangled in my sweater, and whisper, "Don't go far, Mama." Funny how far we can go without ever leaving the room. I started painting again on day 4. I bought the cheapest brushes I could find at the general store, set up near the east window where the sun liked to visit first. My hands were stiff, but they remembered. They remembered how to mix color, how to press sorrow into canvas until it started to look like peace. The cottage came with an extra key. I left it in a drawer. No one asked for it, because no one knew I was here. And that felt like power. I used to answer every text, every call, every guilt-laced voicemail that began with, "After everything I've done for you." But now, I wake up to birdsong and nobody needing a check. I grocery shop without someone asking, "Is that on sale?" I sit in my chair, the one I bought just for this corner, and I sip tea like it's never been thrown at me. She emailed once. Just once. "Where are you? Don't make this a thing. You're still part of this family." I blocked her. Not out of cruelty, but because I was done being summoned like a servant and dismissed like an old appliance. People ask why I never talk about her, especially the woman next door. Nice girl, mid-40s, runs a herb stall at the weekend market. She brought me a pie once and said, "You live alone?" I smiled. "No," I said. "I live with the absence I chose." She didn't ask again. Above my sink, there are 2 frames. One holds the first invoice Claire gave me, the one where she listed utilities used during your stay. She printed it on pink paper. Next to it, a handwritten note in black ink. My own writing. Shaky, certain. No one charges me for peace. Sometimes at night, I sit on the front porch, wrap a blanket around my shoulders, watch the fireflies flirt with the grass, and I think about the woman I was, the one who shrank to fit into rooms her daughter never built for her. I don't hate her. She was doing her best. But I don't miss her either, because I'm not her anymore. There's a knock on the door some days. Someone looking to sell solar panels, or a neighbor asking about the wild tomatoes. But it's never Claire. It never will be. She doesn't know where I went. And that's the point. She can't follow a map that doesn't mark every road she burned. I never gave her the spare key. Not even when she asked. Not even when she said, "What if there's an emergency?" This is the emergency, Claire. Me. Alone. Alive. Unbothered. I built this quiet one brick at a time. One deleted contact at a time. One unspoken goodbye at a time. And now I don't hear screaming anymore. I hear wind. And sparrows. And the sound of a teacup settling gently into its saucer. That's all the closure I ever needed. I didn't expect to see her again. Not after the things she said. Not after the way she left, slamming doors with my name in her mouth like it was something bitter. But there she was, 1 year later, standing at the edge of my porch like a stranger dressed in old memories. New haircut. Expensive coat. A baby wrapped in a blanket she didn't knit. She looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I'd just finally grown. I didn't open the door. Not yet. I stood behind the curtain, just enough to see her, not enough to be seen. She didn't knock. Not at first. She just stared at the house. The one she once said I didn't need. The one she tried to erase me from. The one I fought to protect when all I wanted was to be wanted. Then she said it, through the glass, soft enough to make the wind hold its breath. Mom! She hadn't called me that in a long time. Not since the day she yelled, "If you can't pull your weight, go sleep in your car." As if all my years of carrying her weren't already enough. I waited. Silence can be so loud when it's deserved. She rocked the baby gently. A girl, maybe. Pink hat. Soft cheeks. A sleeping innocence unaware of the battlefield it had been brought to. She should know her grandmother, she whispered. Like that made everything else disappear. Like the baby was a key. But I no longer opened doors for people who only remembered me when they needed shelter. I remember the last time I opened a door for her. It was raining. She didn't knock then either. Just barged in, waving bills, complaints, and entitlement like they were housewarming gifts. Back then, I thought love meant giving without stopping. Now, I know better. Love is not the same as access. And motherhood is not a lifetime subscription to abuse. She finally knocked. 3 times. Just like she used to when she forgot her keys after curfew. Old habits echo louder than apologies. I stepped closer. But I didn't open. I just pressed my hand against the inside of the door. Felt the grain of the wood. The lock beneath my palm. She started crying then. Not the loud kind. Not the tantrum tears she used to weaponize. These were quieter. Heavier. "I miss you," she said. And for a moment, just a moment, I almost believed her. But then I remembered. I remembered the invoice she slid under my bedroom door, charging me rent to live in the house I bought. The one she used to do cartwheels in. I remembered the night I sat outside in the cold because she had guests over and said I made the place look tired. I remembered being erased, in my own kitchen, my own living room, my own life. I remembered shrinking. And now I was finally the right size for my own skin. "I don't want to fight anymore," she said, voice cracking. But we weren't fighting. We never were. Fighting requires 2 people choosing the same ring. She had been throwing punches. I had just been standing there, hoping love would be enough padding. "Things are different now," she added. Yes, they were. I had stopped begging to be seen. I had stopped auditioning for a role I was born into. Mother. I had stopped handing my piece to people who didn't know how to hold it. I looked at her. Really looked. And all I saw was a woman, trying to step back into a house she had burned herself out of. I could smell the ashes on her coat. "Love without respect," I said, voice steady, "is just performance." She blinked like I had slapped her, but I hadn't even raised my voice. I didn't need to. The truth always echoes, even in a whisper. She hugged the baby tighter, tears rolling now, big ones, the kind she used to reserve for courtroom-style guilt trips. I didn't open the door, but I spoke through it. "You taught me something," I said, "about titles. Daughter, mother, owner. I used to think those were forever. Now I know they're earned." She sobbed. Not because I was cruel, but because I wasn't being cruel, and that somehow hurt more. Because I wasn't giving her the fight, the chaos, the open door. I was giving her a mirror. And some people can't stand the reflection. The baby whimpered. She hushed her gently. I wondered for a moment what kind of mother she'd become. Would she teach that little girl to love with conditions? To calculate affection? To count sacrifices like receipts? Or would she remember this moment, standing on the wrong side of the door she chose to walk away from, and decide to do it differently? That was hers to answer, not mine. I held the lock, not as a threat, as a promise, to myself, To the woman who cried into cold tea night after night, wondering why love wasn't enough. To the woman who finally stopped apologizing for having boundaries. Please, she said one last time. But I had already forgiven her. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. And peace doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I let go of needing her to understand. I didn't open the door. I didn't say goodbye. I just stood behind it, hand on the lock, heart full, not with anger, but with clarity. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not speak, not cry, not argue, but simply choose the lock over the open door. And in that moment, I wasn't just a mother, or a woman, or a hurt heart. I was someone who had finally learned that silence isn't surrender, it's sovereignty, and that not every knock needs an answer.